Hey, everybody. Welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have California Congressman Ro Khanna back with us today. We'll chat with the congressman in just a second. But first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So, Representative Ro Khanna is a leading progressive voice in the House, representing California's 17th Congressional District, located in the heart of Silicon Valley, and he is serving his 5th term. He serves as vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, on the House Armed Services Committee, as ranking member of the Subcommittee on Cyber, Innovative Technologies, and Information Systems. He's a member of the Select Committee on the Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party, and he also serves on the Oversight and Accountability Committee, where he previously chaired the Environmental Subcommittee. Congressman, welcome back into the back room.
It's great to be back.
So let's start with the economy, the tariffs, and the trade wars. Yesterday, we saw the new Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, in the Oval Office with Trump. What did you make of that meeting?
Well, Mark Carney is running circles around the economic understanding of Donald Trump. You know, Mark Carney ran the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, two major banks before becoming prime minister. And he, in part, engineered the sell-off of U.S. bonds that was freaking out Donald Trump and got him to pull some of those tariffs. And then now, of course, Japan is threatening that. My concern is the economic illiteracy of the administration. You had Howard Lutnick out there saying that if we got rid of the trade deficit, $1.2 trillion, for every $300 billion, it would be 1% of GDP growth in the United States. And somehow we'd magically have 4% of GDP growth. There are two problems with this. First of all, we had a trade surplus during the Great Depression. It didn't work out to having GDP growth. Secondly, I don't want to get too technical, but if you have $300 billion of domestic production, you have $300 billion of less in capital inflows. And those capital inflows go to bonds that spur domestic investment. And any economist, Econ 101, would tell you it's not as simple as a one-to-one relationship of reducing the trade deficit and increasing GDP. We should reduce the trade deficit, but it's not what Lutnick believes. So we have a bunch of people who don't understand the modern economy in charge of the modern economy.
Well, it's hard to understand what the real underlying motivations of the tariff policy is. On the one hand, Trump says he wants to bring in a tremendous amount of revenue from tariffs, which would then perhaps eliminate the need for income taxes. At the same time, they also say that they want to lower the tariffs overall to make it a level playing field. And then the third thing is to bring manufacturing back to the United States. All of these things seem to contradict each other. They can't all happen at the same time, right?
You know, you can't say that, okay, we're going to repeal the tariff in a month and say to Mary Barra, build factories here. She's going to say, why should I build factories here when you're going to be repealing it in a month? And the reality is you can't build the factories here or supply chains here without the workforce. We don't have, for example, in electronics manufacturing, enough of the precision machinists, the tool engineers, the electronic manufacturing hub. So you have to invest in the workforce. You have to provide financing for the federal factories. You have to help provide a guarantee if the products are made here. Guess who did that, Andy? Joe Biden. That was Biden's policies. That was the CHIPS Act. That was the IRA. And yet Trump doesn't want to do any of that. He wants to have this kind of tariff war that's not going to help bring manufacturing back, that's upsetting our allies, that's spooking the bond market, that is destroying consumer confidence. It's the most irrational economic policy in America since Herbert Hoover.
Yeah. So given how the global supply chain works, returning America's manufacturing dominance is really just a fantasy.
Well, look, we can be dominant in certain industries. I'm all for advanced manufacturing. We should be dominant in semiconductors, make modern steel here with hydrogen, make modern aluminum chips. I mean, I agree with the goals. It's just that the way to do it is to have federal financing of these factories, a national investment bank, to have a guarantee that you're going to have American demand, to be investing in the workforce, and to be realistic about what are the industries we can do and what are the industries that we can't do. I mean, it was so outrageous for Donald Trump, a billionaire who loves living in gold-plated buildings, to be lecturing America's kids that They shouldn't have more than a few toys. I mean, come on, what are we doing here? One of the things people love about America, if they're visiting, is they go to the grocery store and they see 55 cereal boxes. Now, it used to be the far left in the 1950s and 1960s that used to lecture Americans. You shouldn't have 60 cereal boxes. That's consumerism. Just have 2 cereal boxes. And that didn't work out so well for the far left or for the communists. Now it's Donald Trump lecturing Americans saying, oh, you got too many consumer choices. Come on. We love to shop in America.
Yeah, well, he's channeling his inner Marie Antoinette. But, the point you're raising is a good one because it's another inherent contradiction. He consistently claims that it is countries that pay the tariffs, yet at the same time, he's also telling us you're going to have to cut back on consumption and prices are going to go up. So that means it's not countries, it's the consumer, it's the importer, and then the consumer.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, you're going to have the business that's importing the product is going to have to pay some of it. The exporter probably pays some of it, and the consumer pays some of it. And the honest truth is, it's a fee that's distributed around to all 3 of those parties: consumer, the importer, and the exporter. And you know what a rational White House would do is say, well, we're going to study this and see what the impacts are and have a number of economists study it. But of course, this administration doesn't believe in any economists involved. Howard Lutnick gave a major speech. And you know what Lutnick said? At the end, he said, well, so the administration's policy is going to be trust in Donald Trump in the art of the deal. Literally, there is no policy. It's whatever Donald Trump wakes up in the morning thinking. And the businesses understand that. That's why they are not investing. That's why they're uncertain. That's why the economy now, Goldman Sachs is saying 45% chance of recession. And business spending is drying up. And unfortunately, it looks like that's where we're headed.
Yeah, well, there's no consistency between what Trump says, what Lutnick says, what Peter Navarro says, and what Scott Bessent says. But so last night, the administration announced that Treasury Secretary Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, they're going to meet with their Chinese counterparts in Switzerland this week. What do you expect to come from these talks?
I don't know, because the EU has already said that they would do a 0-for-0 tariff deal. They did that before Trump even announced these tariffs. So the problem is, why isn't Trump meeting with the head of the EU? And now they're meeting one by one with these countries. First, they say it would take 90 days. Now they're saying longer. Seems a very inefficient way of going about it. And my concern is just this drags on and hurts the American economy.
I want to switch to what you've been doing. You've been out traveling to other states to hold rallies in red districts. Why are these events so important? And what are you hearing from the folks there?
I've been amazed by the turnout. We've done 5 town halls in red districts, 3 in rural California, 1 in rural Nebraska, 1 in New Jersey. People are upset. They're angry. They're fearful. They're fearful that their Medicaid may get cut. They're fearful that their services to their kids for education may get cut, that public education is going to be gutted. They're angry that these are being cutted by an unelected billionaire like Elon Musk. They're angry that tax breaks are going to the billionaires in my district in Silicon Valley, while they're not getting their funding for healthcare and education. Now, the town halls have been effective. I mean, I'm doing this out of my own funds because I can't be doing it on officially. And I've been traveling all over the country. We're doing 2 more in Pennsylvania. We're doing Washington, Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, and I have 50 more invitations. So I'm trying to get to as many places as I can. But one of the Congress people flipped. Valdeo was voted against Medicaid cuts. We went in, we did our town hall. Bernie did it, and now Valdeo is against the Medicaid cut. So it's having an impact.
Yeah, and do you get a sense that there's an appreciable amount of Republicans that attend these town halls?
I do believe that there are about 10% Republicans, but there are a lot of independents, and there are a lot of Democrats who didn't vote, and there are about 1,000 people. And what I've said to people is, when I ran for Congress, there were about 50 folks who showed up at most in my event. So to have 1,000 people in a district that are mobilized, that's enough for anyone to win. And I believe that we need to do this in every red district in this country. That's competitive.
You're one of the many people who believe our healthcare system is broken. So how do we fix it?
Well, it's not that I believe it's broken. It is broken. I mean, we have Deaton and Case who've written a whole book about how it costs Think about it. It costs an employer $25,000 to pay for healthcare just to hire someone. This is one of the reasons we've had wage stagnation. They can't raise wages because it's going all into healthcare to the private insurance, pharmaceutical companies. This is what's causing offshoring. And then you talk to people, so many doctors are out of network. I've had to deal with, even though I have some of the most privileged existence as a member of Congress, I've had to deal with being on the phone to get prior authorization, being denied, not having certain medicines covered. It's ridiculous. What we need is every doctor in network, Medicare for all. We need to have Medicare negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies to lower the cost of prescription drugs. We need to make sure that hospitals can't charge 2 to 3 times for the same procedure that you could get at a clinic. And people can keep their private insurance as supplemental insurance. It's not Blue Cross Blue Shield. You get Medicare, and then your Blue Cross Blue Shield becomes supplemental for anything you may need. But every doctor will be in network.
So what's going to happen with the House budget bill? Can Republicans achieve Trump's big, beautiful bill goal of giving huge tax cuts to the wealthy without cutting Social Security, Medicare, and or Medicaid?
Well, they can't. I mean, the reality is that it requires $880 billion of cuts to Medicaid. That's their budget. So they're going to have to do one of two things. They're either going to have to lower their tax breaks and not give the tax breaks to the billionaires and millionaires, or they're going to have to cut Medicaid, cut public education, continue to cut national science. Think about the cuts to medical research. This is not being talked about enough. This budget cuts medical research by 40% less research on Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, on cancer, on food allergies and allergies in general. I mean, it is awful.
That includes HHS, CDC, and NIH. And so given all that, how concerned are you that RFK Jr. is in charge of our nation's health, especially as we have a measles outbreak? We're still dealing with bird flu. I mean, my God, if we end up with another pandemic-like situation that we were dealing with in 2020 and 2021 with him at the helm?
It is devastating what's happening. This should be a 5-alarm fire. I was talking to Francis Collins the other day. He's the former head of the NIH. There are 18 directorates at the NIH. The NIH funds all of the different types of medical research in this country. If you have someone in your family who has Parkinson's, who has Alzheimer's, who has heart disease, cancer, severe allergies, this is where all of the research is done, rare diseases. And Collins was saying that 6 of the 18 directors have been removed, many of them career folks, and they're gutting NIH as we speak. It's at 30% operational level. They are taking away the research, drug research, not just for America, for the world. We do the drug research for the world. And it's just a total dismantling, destruction of American medical research.
Yeah, well, you're right. This administration's massive spending cuts have been devastating to Americans, as well as our interests overseas. This includes USAID, education, veterans, public broadcasting, which I want to ask you about in a minute. Yet Republicans in Congress seem unwilling or unable to stop this financial assault. They have simply abdicated their responsibility and oversight over federal spending. I know the party, Democrats, are in a minority, but what needs to be done? And do you think there's going to be any progress as this situation perhaps worsens and Republicans may get to grow a pair at some point?
Well, if the whole Madisonian system counted on ambition to check ambition. Madison said, enlightened statesmen will not always be at the helm in the Federalist paper. You may have people who are like Donald Trump. He anticipated that. But what he didn't anticipate is that you would have all these people who had the ambition to run for Congress and Senate lie supine and not stand up for their own pride. You've had Republicans basically go along with everything Donald Trump wants, even though their district doesn't want to, even though it's unconstitutional. Now, the Democrats need to be bolder too, and we're getting there. Schumer made a colossal mistake. I mean, a total blunder by capitulation without getting any guarantees. You would think after that many years in the House and Senate, he'd be a better negotiator. But since then, we've stiffened our spine, and we're going to make sure that we get something done.
And what about PBS and NPR? This is going to have tremendous impact on families, is it not?
So the most viral thing I've done, all Congress, is questioning one of the witnesses who was talking about NPR cut, the PBS cut and NPR cuts. And millions of people watched the video, and we got hundreds of thousands of phone calls because I asked the person who was going on and on and on about how he had to cut all of PBS and NPR and how it was of no value. I said, who's your favorite character on Daniel Tiger? And he had no answer. And did he know what Ugga Mugga was? No answer. And did he know what Daniel Tiger was? No answer. Did he know that it was the successor to Mr. Rogers? No, he didn't. I mean, so just people who are railing against this stuff who don't know that it does incredible programming for young families and kids to build their emotional intelligence, their educational intelligence, things that the private sector won't do because it requires so much research, so much funding and psychology and education, and that requires public spending. I mean, a Disney or an HBO, et cetera, aren't going to spend that kind of money.
You know, it's just so fascinating to me how issues like funding for public broadcasting or battling climate change have become these like woke wedge issues where somehow we're not all drinking the same water or breathing the same air, or our children aren't watching all these incredible children's programming. It's a shame that this stuff has become political. But I want to jump back to Social Security for a second, because I know this is an issue that concerns you about the administration asking the Supreme Court to give DOGE access to Social Security systems and data. What should every American know about this threat to their privacy?
It's chilling. I mean, I first introduced the Internet Bill of Rights in 2017 to protect American data. But think about this. Do you really want Elon Musk and a number of 20-something-year-old software engineers having access to all your personal information, where you were born, how old you are, your financial information, your family information, your residence? And what could they do with that kind of data? It's really concerning. I mean, they could build profiles on you. They could help predict things about you. They could market things to you. So the Supreme Court needs to be very clear that that data should be kept in secure places and not DOGE shouldn't be given access to it.
You know, I'm encouraged by what I've seen out of the courts. I'm encouraged also by what I've seen in the Supreme Court. I think it's doing a pretty good job in serving as a critical check. But do you think they're going to be there in the end to preserve and protect these rights that we as citizens have against attacks on due process, threats to our privacy?
I sure hope so. Look, I met with John Roberts a couple of years ago in his chambers and for an hour, and he was in tears pointing to a picture about founders and their sacrifices for the country. And so while I have profound disagreements with him, I would hope he has a reverence for our political religion, as Lincoln called it, our allegiance to our Constitution. And the Constitution is so clear. Every person has due process in this country under the 14th Amendment. It doesn't say every green card holder. It doesn't say every citizen. It says every person. Every person has free speech in America. Now, J.D. Vance, and I gave a major speech on this at Yale Law School just 2 weeks ago. It also has gone viral because I said Vance has been graduating is a stain on the degree of every Yale graduate. And both of us have gone to Yale Law School. But Vance is arguing that we should have less due process for those who are immigrants in America. That is his actual argument. He's not even hiding the ball. And he's saying that it's too much of a cost for us to be giving immigrants due process. So he's basically saying violate the 14th Amendment, don't have rights applied to every person, and that the Trump administration could defy the Constitution. It's going to come up to the Supreme Court to make it clear that that's not legal.
Yeah, and this Kilmar Abrego Garcia case really is sort of the linchpin in all this. Like, this is where the test of our Constitution and our democracy hinges.
It is. I mean, if they can deport Abrego with no due process to a dictatorship, they could do that to any vulnerable person in America who wasn't a citizen. And who knows how far they go. And now talking even about potentially having citizens or criminals be deported. Karl Rove was at Fox News, and he was saying that Trump's numbers are falling on immigration. He never would have guessed of all the things. I mean, obviously, he's falling on the economy. He's falling on chaos and predictive stability, but he's falling on immigration. And he said that the reason he's falling on immigration is most Americans don't like what happened to Abrego. And he said, just bring him back, put him on trial. He may even get convicted and then deport him. But every week that they aren't doing that, his numbers are falling. And I saw this in rural Nebraska, 95% white community, 50% of their questions were outraged over due process denials on immigration cases.
Why do you think this administration is making this the hill to die on?
I think they overread their mandate. It's absolutely clear that people were upset with 8 million or so undocumented folks coming across the border. We should have done a better job on border security. America, in the previous administration, we didn't have comprehensive immigration reform. Donald Trump had 20, 30, 40-point leads on immigration. And so they thought they could do whatever they wanted. But, they didn't realize that while Americans wanted a secure border, they don't want a violation of people's rights and due process. And there's a humanity that people have.
Let's talk about another threat, and that is on national security with regard to SignalGate. Last week, NSA Mike Waltz was fired. Despite what Trump spins about it, it was not a promotion. We know there was at least one other major breach of security by SecDef, Hegseth. How important is it that he also be fired?
I called on him to resign, and not just because of the security breaches, but he's just in over his head. I mean, generals are leaving. It's a total mess at the Pentagon.
The generals aren't leaving; they're getting fired, right?
Well,
20% of the senior generals are getting booted. That's crazy.
Well, it's not just the generals are getting fired, which is awful and compromising our security, but it's also that some of them are leaving, that they just can't work in this environment. So it's both. And he fired General Law, who was the head of Cyber Committee, one of the most nonpartisan people. And so I called on him to resign. Look, why not appoint someone like Tom Cotton? I don't agree with Tom Cotton on things, but he's a serious person. He's substantive, and he was all there surrogating for Donald Trump. And there are a lot of Republicans. Mike Rogers, the chair of the Armed Services Committee, I disagree with him all the time. He's a substantive, serious person. They picked someone who just is not serious about our national security.
So what happens if, the odds are he's probably not going anywhere? I mean, who knows with this administration, but there's nothing Congress can do, again, with Democrats in the minority. Like, we just have to wait until the midterms to control spending, to take back oversight, to deal with issues like this, to hold hearings. Like, is there anything that can be done? Or are we just the mercy of the whims of one man who thinks he's king?
Well, we have had Republicans start to speak out about this. Don Bacon spoke out. I respect Don Bacon. He's the chair of the Armed Services Emerging Technology Committee. I'm the top Democrat on that committee. And so my hope is more Republicans will speak out. I mean, this is not partisan. This is about our national security. And like I said, you could put another conservative Republican in there. I'm not expecting that, they're going to put Adam Smith or someone of my ideology there. I'm saying put a Republican there, but just a Republican who's not going to leak our war plans to friends and family to show off, and who's going to be competent.
The last question I want to ask you is with regard to impeachment of Trump. That word is being bandied about again, potentially using it as a threat. The other side is saying, hey, this is a reason why you should vote for us in the midterms because they're going to go out and impeach Trump again. Do you think what he's done these past 3 months constitutes impeachable offenses?
Yeah, but impeachment is a political question. I mean, is it an impeachable offense that he's telling people to go buy his meme coin and then saying, come over for dinner, and then people buying their meme coin are bragging that he's going to change his policy on tariffs because they're buying his meme coin to enrich him? Of course, that's definitionally illegal and unconstitutional. The question is, what should the Democrats focus on? Yes, we should point out the unconstitutional actions, but I think we campaign on how he's hurting people's retirement accounts and how he's hurting the economy and how he's just taking away Medicaid and how he's taking away constitutional rights, and what we're going to do to raise wages and provide paid family leave and make sure we have childcare and make sure we have a real vision for economic prosperity in this country. People want us to address the substance. They're exhausted. They're exhausted and they're embarrassed. More than angry, they're exhausted and embarrassed. And they want serious leadership that's going to solve their problems and bring this country together. And that's what the Democrats should focus on.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I think winning back the working class is going to be the key. And I think just saying Trump is evil is not going to be the way to get there. Congressman, thank you so much for coming back on. Look forward to our next chat, and good luck out there.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you for your voice at these very difficult times.
Take care. This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg, and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.